and coffee.
Well, if no one's gonna drink this, maybe I'll just... Ugh, that's terrible. That's...
How I
Well,
was and I am.
good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good golly, Miss Molly. Welcome to Morning Coffee with Brian on Pop Culture Minefield. A great big hello to everybody out there on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, KGRA Digital Radio, and whatever other platforms we may be leaking onto from here. Good morning to you all. I could see a great bunch of people in the chat already on the YouTube side. So good morning to you guys. We will be obviously checking in on you throughout the show with your wonderful chats and your great support. Thank you very much. And also a big thank you to our sponsors as usual. Fuel Up for work, rest, and play. Fuel Up Hydration. Check out the show description for more details on those guys, and there'll be some more information at the top of the hour. So thank you to Fuel Up. So good morning to our special guest this morning, the mysterious fourth rowdy. He's the Pete Best of the piece. I'm just kidding. I'd like to welcome producer, writer, musician, tour manager, concert producer, and concert promoter and front of house guy, Mr. Mark Emery. How are you, sir?
Thank you very much, and nice to be here. It's nice to see you, Brian, and all the guys. Yeah.
Yeah, good to see you again, mate. Thank you for joining us. It's what is it, 4 p.m. in the wonderful
4 p.m. in the UK, and the sun is shining down here in Devon.
Nice.
So it's been a nice day so far, and looking forward to transmitting with you guys. And it's finally warming up down here in Devon.
Oh, good. So. No, it's a lovely place, and we'll talk about that. I definitely want to talk about that because it's a beautiful county. But thank you for joining us, and we're definitely going to have a long look through your career, multifaceted career, I'd have to say.
Yeah, well, that's what comes with age.
So thank you for joining us.
It's
great to get you on your own without the northern yobs.
I'm glad to be rid of them guys. They finally got rid of them the other day. They were all here for doing some recording and stuff, and it was great to see them, but God, glad they've gone.
What a bunch. Yeah, well, we'll definitely talk about the north-south divide for sure. Before we go any further, though, I'd like to say hello to our regulars first on the panel. First of all, John, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Glad to be here with Mark and hear more of the fantastic stories from the road.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can't get enough of those. We cannot get enough. Also, good morning to Martine. How are you, sir? Quiet. That's how he is.
Yeah.
He's there somewhere, but he's sitting there in the background. His icon is looking after us. But
no,
also,
I was muted. I'm sorry.
Good morning,
Boomerang.
The streaming curse, the mute button.
Yeah, and I was so happy telling that I was so happy to be here
they
today.
Should remove the mute button because we all use it. We all misuse the mute button. But thanks for being here, buddy. Appreciate it. Good to see you. And a very special welcome to our great friend, both of this channel and that 70s rock fan channel, Dustin of Keto Simple. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh,
I'm excited to hear these stories.
oh, it's great to see you, my friend. Always good to see you. I'd like to say hello to everybody in the chat. That's all chatting away in a very chatting fashion. I can't think of any puns with the word chat, but our great friend Anima Confusa. We have Davina, the wonderful Davina Duckworth is here. Bush McFadden. Whose accent? We've all got accents. We got an English accent, we got a Scottish accent, we got a Mexican accent, we got American accents. We got them all.
Who is Devine? Is he got? Is it Devine?
It's Davina.
Yeah, Davina.
The lovely
Okay.
Davina. I don't know. I'm not sure where Davina's from. Anima's in Vienna, though. So, beautiful city, I believe. I've always wanted to go there. Dragon Ruse, good morning to you. Good morning to Andy Morrow from the UK. Mrs. A is here. Good morning, Mrs. A. D. Bud Martin, the wonderful D. Bud Martin, great supporter of all of us. And super mod on many channels, including mine. And did I mention Bush McFadden? Hello, Bush McFadden.
Yes, I think.
Yeah, Bush.
Bush, the mighty Bush.
The mighty Bush, indeed.
Yes. Yeah, so good morning to you all. Yeah, keep the chats going and questions going and all sorts of good stuff like that. So Mark, my friend, as we mentioned earlier, you're a part of this crazy group called the Rock and Roll Rowdies.
I am. I don't know whether it's a credit or
and you guys have been over the last year or two or more been building up your presence online. I'd like to point everyone towards the Rock and Roll Rowdies YouTube channel for starters.
Yeah.
Where you guys have been not only doing stuff with me and on both my channel and Pop Culture Mindful, but you have your own channel which has got a lot of material on it you guys have done. So how's that going?
Yeah, it's going good. It's we actually launched about a year ago, I think January last year. The guys had been recording just sort of random stuff for a year before that, but they had nobody to edit the stuff. I'm good friends with Wilco and all the guys have been for many, many years. And just in communicating, he said, I need someone to edit our stuff. And I went, well, I can do that. So, so I'd sort of signed up, if you like, to the Rock and Roll Rowdies. And yeah, it's been a challenge, but it's really been good. A big learning curve how to get this stuff out online. But it's the whole thing behind it is, the amount of history and work that myself and these guys have done in the 70s. It needs to be, somehow written down or cataloged in some way. And we thought that doing, audio and video podcasts would be a great way to do it. So, it is valid, I think.
It is. I mean, it's a fantastic treasure trove of stuff. I mean, I'd have to thank you guys for appearing on a lot of shows with me and inviting you into the fold. But there's a lot of additional stuff that you've recorded on the channel. So please, everybody, go and subscribe to the Rock and Roll Rowdies and check out all the great material on there. There's just so many tales.
Well, there is. I mean, and the guys are fantastic. I mean, they're all from Hartlepool, as you might know, which is a small northern town, but they're very sort of very working class northern guys with broad accents, and they're totally different to me. I've just got a regular Devon accent. I don't know what I've got. I'm mid-Atlantic because I did live in the States for 15 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean they're just really good at talking and remembering all this stuff. So really, I'm just a sideline guy helping them out and interjecting my stuff. But we've got a lot of history together.
Oh yeah, it's great history. You do also. I just want to get this from. I'm kind of want to get this stuff out of the way so before we dive into the deep conversations. You do have your own YouTube channel separately as well, with Mark Emery's World, where you've got a lot of the performances you've done in various bands and talking about the songs that you've written. So please, everybody, check that out as well. Mark Emery's World. And don't forget that 70s rock fan. Great channel with lots of Rowdies material on it. So
we're
check out some
over. We're taking over Brian's world.
You have. Check out some of the great shows we've done together, both here on Pop Culture Minefield and on my channel. The Rowdies is just the most, it's gold dust, in my opinion. So I'll stop sharing that for the moment. So you talked a little bit there about the divide, the north-south divide of the UK, and the fact that the rest of the other three Rowdies, Wilco and Granny and Mal, are all from Hartlepool, which is pretty much as far north as you can get in England. And you're from the beautiful county of Devon. So is there a divide?
There's a northwest divide, but not really, because we basically all, because we're all very similar age. We all sort of came to the same conclusion at the same time that basically these little towns that we live in, we're not going to get anywhere here. So let's get into London and see what we can churn up, and that's what happened. I left home when I was about 16. Sort of fell out with my parents and all that, which was a bad thing at the time, but in the end it wasn't a problem. But we were I was into the music down here, and we were listening to a lot of stuff back in those days. John Mayall Blues Breakers, the Beano album, Hendrix. I was playing in a little band, and we were covering Hendrix stuff and all that type of stuff.
No, I definitely want to get into that, mate. And just sorry to interrupt. Just wait to say thank you to Darius Munchausen, my brother on the interwebs, for a $4 super sticker of somebody drinking a cup of coffee, I believe. I can't quite see that without my glasses on. Thank you, Darius. Okay. Thank you for that, Darius. There's a little clip for you.
Take him to Detroit.
No, not Detroit. No, please. Anything with that. No.
Thank you, Darius. You're, as you say, you're from a little town, I believe, if I can get this right, from a little town called Paignton in Devon.
Paignton,
right?
yeah. Paign, Paignton.
I see. So I think I have a.
It's part of the borough of Torbay, so I'm Torbanian.
Torbanian, you're a Torbanian.
It's a little sub-country.
So I seem to have put a pin in the Paignton Zoo there, which is not a comment on anything. But this is down in the south. Yeah, anyone who doesn't know England that well, this is down in the southwest, that leg that sticks out below Wales. The beautiful counties of Devon and Cornwall. You're not far from Cornwall. I've spent many great times down there. Absolutely gorgeous. So it must have been quite nice growing up there, I would have thought.
Well, it's a nice corner of the world, but it was in the 50s when I grew up. It was, we grew up on a council estate. My father actually brought us here. He's a Scouser. And a musician, and he came out of the army, which is another story, the whole story of him in the army and everything during the Second World War. But he got answered a job in the Melody Maker when he was in Liverpool, and for the summer season to play in an orchestra in Paignton at the Tembani, and so he came down and did the summer season there, and my mum came and joined him at the end of the season, and then I was born down there. So I'm Devonian, but with 100% Scouse blood.
So there's a bit of Scouse in there.
That's great. And all my family are Scouse, yeah.
Your father was a musician. What instrument did he play?
He's piano player. Piano, accordion, piano.
So keyboard instruments, yeah.
Very good player.
Was that like the big band? So we're talking really the big band era.
Yeah, I mean, his favorite player was Fats Waller. You're talking about the Count Basie era and all that type of big band type thing.
Yeah.
And,
So you
Benny
grew up
Goodman.
Benny Goodman, yeah.
yeah, all that type of stuff. In fact, a very good friend of mine is a daughter of, it's a clarinet player who played with Benny Goodman and all that. So
Okay.
and she lives locally as well. She's a great talent, Danny Turner.
All right. Yeah.
Another Turner, nothing to do with
Another
Martin.
no relation, but
No relation. There's quite a
so
few.
they're
of them.
Martin and Ted, and yeah.
Martin and Ted are not brothers either.
No, I know, which always confused the hell out of me, but yeah.
Although they went along with it after time, because it was easier, and people like the idea that they were brothers, but they definitely weren't.
Yeah, it's like Darius. He's my internet brother. We're not actually brothers, just for those who think we are. But he's making some amusing comments around the names of places in England. A wall of corn and a pool full of livers. Yes.
A pool of livers.
Liverpool's a great place. I mean, do you visit it? Have you visited?
I do. I've got a lot of relatives there, and I love the city. It's got a great history. It really has. I mean, it's been through a lot of deprivation, in the early 50s and all that. But it's come to life brilliantly now, and it's just hosted the Eurovision Song Contest.
Oh yeah,
which was quite an event.
So did Wales win? No, I'm just. I don't know.
I don't know who won. Oh, it was Sweden, I believe, won.
Sweden, all right, yeah.
Girl singer, yeah.
Hey, if Cliff Richard's not appearing in it, I'm not interested.
I think he's gone past the.
He's past Eurovision now. Yeah, he was the perennial Eurovision performer. Yes,
that is a fantastic photograph.
Yeah, are you in this one?
I don't think I'm only 1.5 years old at this. This is the Queen's coronation, 1953.
Yeah,
and it's outside of this house on the street.
Oh wow!
This is my family home, which I ended up buying 20 years ago. But anyway,
nice.
The gentleman with the cloth cap on and the accordion is my father.
Oh wow!
And all the neighbors and kids, So that's from the Queen when she was crowned. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've had that recent coronation of Charles. This is the
previous one.
Yeah, I wasn't around then. 10 years later, maybe. But yeah, that's a great picture of your father and playing the accordion too.
He had this magnetic thing about him. He could go into a pub and sit at a table on his own, and within 10 minutes, he'd have a table full of people all talking and stuff. He just had this sort of magnetic personality, and an absolute lovely guy. I've got a lot of stories about him. If you want to get into it, or maybe that's for another time. But
I
want
to. Mate.
Well, it's I'm just thinking about it because they are looking for stories from the Second World War at the moment, because I think there's a big anniversary coming up, and his story hasn't really been told. The fact that I'll keep it brief. He was he signed up before the war. And he was a musician, a bandsman, so they played around all the towns and that. But then when the war come, he was conscripted in, and he was sent over to France as a stretcher bearer, non-combatant. But sadly, he was captured along with his whole troop and marched off to Poland, 1,000 miles from the north of France. And it's amazing how they managed.
So he's got a lot of stories about that, yeah. And
unfortunately, my father has passed away now, but so I've got to tell his stories for him, I think. But yeah, he had 3 years in prisoner of war camp in Poland.
Yeah,
which is not a. There's no holiday in, no air conditioning, no bar downstairs. Although he did have a fantastic story about because he was a musician. The officers had a mess there, the German officers, and they took him into the village, local village, and bought him an accordion
Oh wow.
so that he could entertain them. And my dad did enjoy a pint or two, so it was a chance for him to sit in the officers' mess and have a pint and entertain the German.
Yeah.
Finding the best way to deal with a horrible situation.
Well, you would take anything you can get in that situation. It's funny, my father-in-law spent 4 years in a German prisoner of war camp as well. He was in the Dieppe raid and got captured, and similar experience. And you would take anything you could get to try and get a little bit of relief from the misery of being the prisoner.
Absolutely. You can't imagine how bad it was. He always made fun of it. He never told me the horror stories, but you can't imagine how it is. But so I mean, he was kind of he lived a charmed life. He'd always sort of end up with, the sort of the gig, the comfortable gig, and sort of he came out of it, and he made it back to the UK, repatriated, and thank God he did. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here.
You wouldn't be here, yes. The funny thing is, there is jokes about accordions. There's one that I made the mistake of leaving my accordion in my car last night, and unfortunately somebody broke into my car, but they left another accordion beside mine. My father was an accordion player too. He was Scottish country dance bands. Yes. Scottish country dance bands. I grew up with him playing the accordion in the house every night.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, back in those days, I mean, the musician in the family was the center of, there was no TV and very little TV and all the rest of it. And the amount of days and the gatherings around the piano, which I still have, it was just an absolute treat. Everybody's singing and stuff,
Was the piano still in the house when you bought it again, or was
it? It was, yeah. It was actually my mother's piano, but my dad played it. She was so intimidated by his playing that she wouldn't touch it.
Was he like Jerry Lee Lewis? Maybe
he could play a boogie. But he was more, the sing-along songs. From the 50s and stuff, and you'd have the whole place singing, and it was more that sort of style,
Lambeth Walk, stuff like that.
I suppose there was a bit of Knees Up Mother Brown. He could always pull out Knees Up Mother Brown if he needed to, but he was a top player.
Oh yeah, I mean that's fascinating, mate, and that I can see how that does influence you. It gets you into music, even if it's not the later rock and roll. It gets you into it, and then. I guess you entered the 60s, you'd be, you get sort of 10, 12 years old in the early 60s. What are your first memories of really getting into rock and roll or listening to music other than that?
Okay, that photo is from about 1971, and that's a Take 6 jacket, fitted jacket, and flared trousers.
The flares, look at the flares. But yeah, getting into music in the 60s, it was an exciting time. What's your first memories of that?
Well, I've got I think the Beatles probably had the biggest influence of all. Maybe before that, I mean, that is Elvis and all that, but I wasn't, to me, I sort of regard that as like the previous generation, before my time-ish. But yeah, I mean, the Beatles, well, right from the start, I was an absolute fan. And I even had a Beatle jacket because of the Liverpool connection. We used to go on holiday in Liverpool every year.
Yeah.
And I was able to get an actual Beatles jacket. Remember the ones with the rounded collar?
Yes, yeah.
And so I was the coolest guy in school when I got back. And
well, of course, there'd still be the original cavern then, because now it's a rebuilt one. That's
I never went there, unfortunately. I was too young at that time. I was only my very early teens.
Exciting time though. I mean that got you into Top of the Pops, I guess. Ready, Steady, Go, shows like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was stuff on the TV at that time. Ready, Steady, Go. There was also
well, 6-5 specials earlier, I guess.
A special.
Various in black and white as well, of course. And all the other bands. So you mentioned some.
Well, I mean, there was the Kinks. There was, Animals. All those bands that were just a bit ahead of they're all probably 10 years older than I was, maybe, and they were all making it at that time. And those were the
Yeah.
bands that I really liked, Manfred Mann. And in fact, I did a gig with Manfred Mann on the last European tour I just did.
Oh,
which,
that's
which
interesting.
he's fantastic, still going at 82.
Wow. Incredible. I
playing.
mean, that's one of the first bands I ever saw live in 1978 was Manfred Mann's Earth Band. I think it was
Oh,
like
the
the
Earth Band.
second gig I ever went to. Chris Thompson was still the singer, and it was just phenomenal. I mean, I loved that band. Is he play? What kind of selection of material was he playing? Can you?
Well, he
recall?
doesn't play the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and all that.
No.
But Blinded by the Light's still there, of course, and
Yeah.
he's just a class act, and all his musicians are top notch live pro guys. There's no
Incredible,
slouches
yeah.
in that band.
Yeah, that's incredible. I didn't realize he was still touring at 82. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, he lives in Sweden,
Yeah.
and he only tours in Germany. He never tours in the UK. He just tours in Germany. But they're all British guys in the band. They fly in, they get a coach, and they tour around Europe for the weekend, and then they fly out again.
Yeah.
He does, he's doing, a few thousand seats every night.
The German and sort of Northern European audience for classic rock still appears to be pretty strong.
A lot stronger than the UK.
Yeah.
UK is pop ridden, which is okay, but that's the young generation. That's all you get on the radio and stuff, So it's, but they're a bit more into the longevity of rock.
Yeah. So it's
And
fertile
I
ground.
think I mentioned it before to Dustin about the metal scene over there is really strong.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I mean, Britain used to be a strong market when I still lived there 20 years ago for classic rock, and a lot of American bands would come over that weren't nearly as big in America, but they were a bit more popular in Britain. I'm thinking of Jason and the Scorchers, the Georgia Satellites, bands like that. They found an audience in Britain. Yeah, that era. Well, I'm not sure. I haven't been there for a few years.
It's
now,
still
so.
popular. You've got the download festivals and stuff like that. There's a lot of metal fans, but it's not blanket,
Yeah. So it's produced, manufactured pop. I guess it's whilst there's 60 plus million people in Britain, I think because the lack of diversity in broadcasting probably means that record corporations can push their product hard on the mainstream. So
yeah, there's always a thing in the UK, even with BBC One, Radio One, and stuff like that, where they're always looking for the new thing. They don't, old stuff gets pushed into the catalogs pretty quick, so they're always pushing for new things. But all these new songs, well, most of them, I can't speak to them all, but most of them just, they last as long as they're in the charts, and then they're forgotten. There's no sort of longevity in. Oh, excuse me. I had my breakfast.
This is live, people. This is live.
So it is.
Positive proof this is live. Yes.
Yes, edit that out.
Yeah, Darius is mentioning that a lot of bands like the Status Quo, who you promoted, concert promoted, Slade, bands like that, huge in Britain, didn't make it in America particularly.
No, no Quo.
There is the other way around. I mean, when I was still going to a lot of gigs in the UK, there was a strand of people like, as I say, the Georgia Satellites, Jason and the Scorchers, other blues and those kind of bands, much bigger in Britain than they ever were in the UK, and they could get a touring audience. So it's fascinating that there are still differences. But what was the first gig you ever went to? Can you remember the early gigs as a fan?
Yeah. I think it was Fleetwood Mac. When you're talking about top bands, there was a guy in Torquay, a proper Torbanian, called Lionel Digby, and he's a legend. He really is. And he was promoting at the Torquay Town Hall, which is the worst bloody acoustics ever. All those top bands on a regular basis, You know, as I said, Fleetwood Mac was first with Peter Green,
The Peter Green,
with Peter
Jeremy
Green,
Spencer,
with
Fleetwood
Jeremy
Mac.
Spencer, Peter Green, but John Mayall's Blues Breakers, all the bands of that era.
Was the Blues was that the era that had Eric Clapton?
That's
in the
right.
Blues Breakers?
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and then
And John McVie, I think, was still in them. Or
yeah, yeah. All that era, Animals,
Hmm.
were all being brought down to Torquay Town Hall by this guy Lionel Digby, and you know he was a real character. He dressed up in cowboy gear, and he had a stagecoach, sort of a fake stagecoach, like out of the
Right.
westerns, and he'd ride down the center of town with and speakers on, and a couple of chicks with guns and holsters on, and they'd be going, you know, sort of Pink Floyd at the town hall tonight, you know, and stuff like that, promoting it the old school way, old school way.
Tom Parker-ish, yeah. Just
He was breaking
yeah.
every law, you know, posters all over the bus stops and stuff like that, you know, but he didn't care. He just got.
I can't imagine anyone these days in Britain being allowed to ride down the town, city centre with firing off fake guns on a stagecoach to be arrested within seconds.
I think so.
Yeah, Peter Green. I am a Peter Green man. I'm a Peter Green, Fleetwood Mac era. Jeremy Spencer, Danny
Well,
Kerwin.
Yeah, brilliant.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
make
did you
people
get to work with those guys later when you got into the
No,
business?
I mean, just going back to that, you know, being a guitarist, which I was a budding guitarist at the time, Peter Green was the best influence. I mean, just watching him and notice how he used the tones on his guitar to change the feel and the tone of the guitar was very subtle and you know, and absolutely brilliant. It just influenced me forever.
Yeah.
And how to you know get the different tones out of the guitar and stuff like that. And he was a real master.
Oh
But,
yeah,
that was
I
that
did
was
get.
a personal influence.
Yeah, I did get to see him later on when he kind of came back a bit in the 90s and did
Splinter
some
Band.
gigs. Yeah, I saw that era of Peter
Yeah,
Green. He was a
yeah.
lot more laid back then, and
Mm.
and I think in the Fleetwood Mac days that you saw him, and he was a force to be reckoned with. I mean,
Absolutely, yeah.
superb guitar player. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but those are great bands to have started out your
Another one I
career.
went to was a club in Plymouth, which is only about 30 miles from here, called the Van Dyke Club. And they also brought a lot of bands through. It's a very small club. And I saw Jethro Tull there.
Tull.
From the first sort of.
So this was era, yeah.
It took it 67 sort of era. Yeah, so
That's
I mean that's
incredible.
another club that is sort of an absolute legendary, you know. These
Yeah.
places that sort of started with it, you know, and sustained and supported that type of music, you know. We wouldn't be where we are today without them, you know.
I'm always fascinated by that, endlessly fascinated by that era of the 60s because of the fact that these bands, some of the hugest bands in the country and in the world, would do these package tours and play these little towns everywhere. The Beatles did it, Stones did it, you know, Jimi Hendrix later did it. They all played the little towns. There was no, I'm only playing Manchester, Birmingham, London. They did everything.
Yeah, those package tours, they didn't reach down into the southwest. We didn't even have a motorway connecting us until, I don't know, the late 70s or early 80s.
Yeah.
You know, it was 5 hours to London on down small roads. You know, it was a real schlep to get to London. For, you know,
well,
hitchhiked it many times.
Well, you would encounter that when you got into the business of having to travel.
The only way was to move to London back then. I mean, now I can basically commute to anywhere in the world, but back then you had to get out and get to London and sleep on a few building sites and try and make your way.
So you started. I mean, you were a budding musician, as you say, in the 60s, and a fan of music. But and going to these gigs, how did you get into the business?
Well, it was, there is only one story with me really, and that's Wishbone Ash.
Yeah.
In the early days, I was very good friends with Glenn Turner, who was Martin's brother.
So there's another Turner.
there is another.
They're
But
not related to Ted Turner.
He's not related to that. No. So they were called the Empty Vessels, and I saw them playing in Torquay, Monroe's, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And they blew me away. Absolutely blew me away. Martin was playing this ridiculously thin-necked bass, but his style was there. They did a version of Stone Free, Hendrix song, and I was absolutely blown away. So anyway, I became very good friends with Glenn, who was the guitarist at the time.
Yeah.
And we used to, basically dream of getting up to London and trying to, get into the business and stuff like that. So Martin, I think the Empty Vessels, they actually did move up to London, and I wouldn't say I followed them, but I was in London at the same time at the very early days. And I was doing a photography job in a commercial photography, and I was quite good at it. I was offered a job on a ship going to the States and back, one of these cruise ship type
All
things.
right. Yeah.
Doing a ship photographer, but at the same time, Wishbone had now been formed, and I started to go along to gigs with Martin, because he was sleeping on the couch in the flat that I was living in. We are talking about the days when none of us had any money. We really didn't have any money, and you're lucky to have any kind of job at all. And Wishbone was just starting. Martin was sleeping on the couch downstairs. Glenn had gone back to Devon. He couldn't hack it in London. And Martin and Steve had auditioned for another guitarist, but they ended up with two, Andy Powell and Ted Turner.
Yeah. Ted Turner, no relation.
No relation. They had a manager called Miles Copeland.
Oh, Miles. Yeah, it's Stuart's
who
brother.
discovered them at the country club in Hampstead on Haverstock Hill, which was a gig that everyone went to. We actually had bed sets on Gloucester Avenue rather, and Primrose Hill, which is right behind the Roundhouse in Camden Town. The only thing that separated was the railway tracks, and we used to go there on a Sunday. It was all day music, Steam Packet, different bands playing.
Oh, Steam Packet,
yeah. And I think they had a West Country connection as well with the guitarist, but I'm not too sure. And yeah, so anyway, this country club was a great little venue up the road, and Wishbone got one of their first gigs there, and Miles Copeland saw them there, and that was the beginning of their journey.
Yeah. Did you? I mean, you knew these guys then as friends. I guess.
Yes, especially Martin and Steve. We were friends. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you? Was there ever a chance that you would have played in the band, or was that just just provocative question?
Yeah. No, there was never an opportunity to do that. At that time, as I say, I was a novice guitarist, and I was always impressed by other guitarists, and didn't really feel that I had enough to make a difference, which is probably wrong. I should have had more confidence in myself, but I never even approached them for anything like that. And they were already a formed band, and you've got to say that those guitarists were exceptional.
So
I'm pretty good, but I'm not exceptional.
Well, we're going to see a bit of you playing later. Trust me, we have some clips of you playing the guitar, and it's pretty astounding. So don't be too modest.
I have got more confidence over the years,
Yeah. Well, later on in the show, we're going to show some of that and play a little bit of the stuff that you've recorded, because you're not just a tour manager and so on. you have recorded, produced, and done all these other things too. So we're going to play a little bit of that in the second hour of the show.
Okay.
But these guys though, they wanted, trusted, and liked you enough to say, come on board as road manager.
Yeah, I mean, at first it was very casual, and I was helping them out, doing a few gigs. I mean, we were going up and down the motorway in a transit van, of course, doing gigs up north. I mean, I specifically remember, like, John Peel was a big fan of Wishbone. They'd recorded their first album at this time, and John Peel was pushing it on the radio, and we did gigs for him. But, you know, this is back in the day when you'd drive up to a gig in Birmingham or even further north, Manchester or something, and then drive back after the gig to get back to London.
Isn't that the barbarian country further north than that? I mean, it's full of barbarians. They're blue-faced, paint with swords. And...
yeah, right. The battlefront. Yeah. Scots all coming down.
That's right, yeah. Those damn northerners, the Picts.
I don't think we went north of the Hadrian's Wall at that time. It's too dangerous. Or even Hartlepool.
Hartlepool, yeah. I'm going to just, I know we shouldn't do such things for copyright purposes. I do want to play a little clip of Wishbone Ash, and actually from Rock Palast in 1976. Okay. Just a few seconds of it, just.
Seven?
77, yeah.
When you go back to when I first went to America with the guys, it was 72, I believe.
Yeah.
And that was a bit of a story because they got offered to go to the States. The first album was out. There was a meeting at Miles Copeland's house, and basically said, "Oh, we can't afford to take anybody with us. That's it. You're not coming. No one's coming." There was me and Chris Runciman were both the crew guys, if you like.
Yeah.
Ted Turner said, I was nicknamed Hobbit at the time. Hobbit is definitely coming. Hobbit is coming. We want him to come, and no matter what, he's coming.
Martin claims he gave you that nickname, Martin Turner.
I believe he might have done, yeah. Bugger. He's still he's the thing is it's a bit of a funny story because back in those days I was Hobbit, and that's what they all called me, and that lasted until I left to work in '79.
Mm.
And then of course 40 years have passed. Nobody called me Hobbit at all. In my other life away from them,
Mm.
and then when I started working with Martin again 6 years ago, all of a sudden they start calling me Hobbit again. So I had to put my foot down, and now I am Mark Emery, formerly known as Hobbit.
Formerly ex Hobbit.
Yeah, ex-Hobbit would be
Yeah.
fun, yeah.
There's a kind of a Martin Turner reference as well, I guess. Ex Hobbit.
Well, ex Martin Turner, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think
So
I think that's an awful name, by the way.
it is, but I mean, there's been a lot of legal difficulties, and I don't know how much you want to touch on that, but later maybe. But so when did you go to the States for the first time?
72, I
Yeah.
believe it was.
It was your first
Yeah.
ever trip.
Yeah, I was 21,
Yeah.
which I thought was quite an achievement. I mean, when I first went to London, scrapped around for a year or two, but once they started touring, we went to Europe. I was 19. We were in Europe gigging. Those guys were all a little bit older than I was. Martin was, so I was like a young guy on the crew, really, on the team. But the first time in the States, absolutely mind blown. We actually went to Washington D.C. and first thing we did, we went to a McDonald's, and I had my first vanilla shake. I know this is really petty.
Yeah, because we didn't have that stuff. I mean, we had wimpy burgers, I remember.
Oh God, the milkshakes in England were pathetic. This
I know,
bubbled up milk.
It was just milk with bubbles. You see how deprived we were? You Americans, how deprived we were in the UK.
Oh, it was luxury, and it was amazing. And we had a big station wagon, and I used to love driving around in that. But we had our ups and downs. There was gigs cancelled. There was the first tour. There was, but we did have all our equipment with us, which
you brought your own gear.
We took our own gear.
Was it a headlining tour, or were these support?
No, we were basically grabbing whatever gigs the agents could come up with.
Yeah.
We did do some big supports. We played in Florida, and I think it was Three Dog Night.
Oh yeah.
Remember
you mentioned that. Yeah, Three Dog Night. Well, they were a big band at the time. Mama told me not to come and all that stuff.
Yeah, they were headlining, and I think was it On the Road Again? Canned Heat. Is that Canned Heat?
Wow.
Yeah. So this was a big dusty. Well, it's like a cow shed, really, a massive place, And that was great, really hot, and this is just like mind blowing coming from little old England, to see the scale of everything in the States, big PAs and
well, they would be getting into that era, and so the heat is that a big problem for you gear wise when you're working with equipment like both the band's equipment and front of house? Does that cause you a lot of problems?
No. Never found heat being a problem. Heat in driving the van was a problem. I had van driver's tan. In fact, I think it was that way, wasn't it? Sitting on driving.
Yeah, the other way.
Yeah, because we were touring mainly, in a van. The band were probably in a car with Kevin Harrington as their personal manager, who you will be meeting.
Well, indeed.
Hopefully soon.
Yeah, Kevin Harrington, you introduced me to Kevin. We're definitely going to be doing a show with Kevin on my channel in the end of June. Kevin is, so he was working for Wishbone Ash at the time, yeah?
Yeah. Kevin came to us from more
Beatles.
loftier places, actually.
From the Beatles. So Kevin Kevin's the guy, if you ever watch Let It Be or Peter Jackson Get Back, and it's the title of his book, he's the redhead in the room. So you'll see a red-headed kid wandering about carrying cups of tea or setting up gear.
Yeah.
That's Kevin Harrington.
He's a ginger. Harry Harrington from Haringey.
Very ginger.
yeah. And you can also see him on Get Back video from the roof. You know, the rooftop sessions.
He's holding the lyrics to Dig
There
a
is one
Pony
video
up.
where he's holding the lyrics up, in front of
Yeah.
John Lennon.
So he was there on the roof, and he came to you guys, but he had a pretty distinguished career after the Beatles. A lot of Derek and
he
the
does, and
Dominoes.
I'll let him tell you about all that.
Yeah,
But he's a
so you were
lovely guy, and we were all good friends. We always like to have a smoke together and stuff like that. I don't know whether you can mention that these days, but
well, you could be talking about anything. Tobacco, you know.
no vapes, no vaping,
no vaping in those days. Yes. So Kevin's a lovely guy. Yeah, it's nice that you knew him then in all these years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there is another bit of a sad story about why Kevin left or had to leave the American tour, but I'll let him explain that, I think.
Yeah. That's so he was there with you, so it was nice. You had a sort of little group of you were all seeing this, experiencing this thing. I guess the some of these huge gigs. It was probably a steep learning curve, but a good one. You must have enjoyed.
We had ups and downs, you know. I mean, a lot of the driving was tough. You know, we actually on a later tour we had the van stolen with all the gear in it. That was all the orange mat amps and stuff like that. I think that was. I think that was in St. Louis. I can't remember, to be honest, but. Yeah, that was
Missouri. You see, Missouri.
About
What
right.
do you expect? That's where John's from. So.
Oh right, man, that was a
Wait
misery.
a minute,
That
John.
was a misery.
Wait a minute, John. Doesn't your father have a van like that? No, it's just.
Yeah. Well, we did get some of it back. It was, you know, it sort of showed up in different music shops and stuff like that, you know, around the country. Fuckers. But, you know,
yeah. Well, this is it.
It really fucked up the tour, you know.
Well, what do you do? I mean, do you just borrow gear? Do you?
I think we had to borrow and steal, just to complete what dates we had. You know.
This is not the guitars, though. Did they lose?
Not the guitars. Not the
Right,
guitars.
okay, right.
But yeah, all the back line. Yeah, so awful. This stuff can happen, you know, on the road. And it's, you know, there
Lots
are
of bands have suffered.
werewolves out there that wander around in the late night and steal your bloody equipment, you know.
Well, St. Louis has always been a high crime area, so.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, anywhere it can be, you know. And we have rules like never tell anyone where you're staying. You know, even if they're so-called friends or fans or whatever, it's like they might tell somebody else, and they go, that's where the van is. That's where that gear is. You know, it's like. You don't want to attract attention that way, but somehow these guys must have known where we were. And what's going on here?
You were doing a lot of front of house, so something I was actually quite interested in. So basically, the sound.
Yeah, we were using Showco and different systems throughout the country. Which we're all developing, you know, at that time, because in the UK it was a lot smaller situation, but you know, PA systems were growing as the size of the venues grew. You know, I mean, it's you know, some of the bigger gigs in the UK had big PAs, but when you got to the States, it was a different thing.
But did you just have to use the desk that was? Was it your desk? I mean,
no. I've never carried our desk. I've never done it. I've always used different desks.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're on tour, you're using the same desk for this. You know, the whole package is touring with you. You know, the sound and lights and everything is traveling with you for all the dates. So, yeah, there's consistency there. But these days, you know, I'm using a different desk every day, which is another bloody story.
Yeah, well, we're definitely going to touch on that later.
The technical brain.
Yeah, in the second hour of the show, where we'll talk a little bit about your current touring with Martin Turner and using going from analog to digital with sound.
Well, I didn't do that until 2013. You know, you know, all the studios and stuff I worked in between were all analog, and still are a lot of them. you know, and
But this mixing, I mean, it's just thinking of how do you mix that sound live for a band? Because I've been to bands where things have started out really badly and it's got better as the gig has gone on. How does that work?
well, the sound check is probably the most important part of the gig for me,
Mm,
because once I get all the levels and inputs and everything assigned correctly at the sound check, then I'm not taking anything away from it. But during the mix, you're basically just tweaking and gradually improving it. But the sound check gives you your basic setup. You've got your basic setup, everything's working. And so that's really important to get that sound check done. And I won't let the band go until the sound check is complete.
that must be a challenge sometimes.
It is, especially when the food's up, or the doors are opening in 5 minutes, and these type of things. Pressure.
But different venues. I mean, you mentioned a venue earlier that was it Torquay Town Hall or whatever that was terrible acoustics. I mean, it must be a real challenge when you go in and you start the sound check and you go, this is shit. Like, what do you do? I mean, how do you combat that if it's terrible acoustics?
We used to run like pink noise and stuff like that with the big systems, and Germany was terrible for, we call them Dumpenhallers, basically the big halls that were really austere and echoey and stuff like that. I mean, it was very difficult to get a decent sound in them. But we used to use the pink noise to flatten the system out, and but you just got to deal with it, and a lot of people make the mistake of going too loud when it's when it's a bad acoustic room, depending on the room. But I find it doesn't have to be really loud, and in fact you can there's two ways. You can just take it back where it's still punchy, but it's not. It gets saturated when you turn it up too loud. It becomes saturated.
Volume isn't always the best.
It isn't, and then it just becomes a mush, and especially in an echoey room, then it just becomes almost indistinguishable.
Just sorry to interrupt you, Mark. We're just going to head to a break shortly, and we'll be back after the break with more tales from the rest of your career, what you're doing now, and some of your exploits as a musician as well.
Right? So how long have you got?
Hi guys, this is Gary from Pop Culture Minefield here on KGRA, and we're leaving for our first break. I hope we survive.
Did you know 75%?
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Oh wow, we survived. Welcome back to the commercial break. Now for some more Pop Culture Minefield on KGRA.
Yes, welcome back, everybody. Thanks to everybody for being here and YouTube. We got a wonderful chat as usual, making some great comments. Hello to everybody else out there on Rumble, Facebook, KGRA Digital Broadcasting. Thanks to you all for being here. Hope you're all having a great morning. We are honored to have a great guest today, Mr. Mark Emery of the Rock and Roll Rowdies, who's giving us some insight into what it was like touring with a major rock band in the 70s. And we talked about sound checks there. Mark, what's the most creative excuse have you heard from a band member who missed a sound check or didn't want to be there?
Oh. Creative excuses.
If you've got any.
I don't think that any band member would ever not show up at a sound check if we're on tour. There can be logistic problems or whatever, in which case you just end up line checking them or whatever. Or maybe I might even put the guitar on and just make sure his kit's working. But unless logistically they can't get there in time or whatever, which happens these days more than that because most people are traveling separately. But yeah, no, the sound check is very important. I mean, a lot of gigs, festival gigs, when you're in a multi lineup, then you don't have a sound check; you have a line check, and you basically have to guesstimate a mix. With experience, you can guesstimate the input channels to make sure they're not overloading, and you could tweak that once the band starts. But basically, you do from experience, an EQ. You think, well, most of the time the EQ on the kick is that, and a bit of a click at 2-3K. You got a preset in your head. The mix is there, and you just have to go for it. I mean, I did a gig not long ago, about 2 years ago, for the Dahl Foundation, which is an Indian band, Sikh, all from Slough in England, by the way.
Slough that's near Windsor. Yeah, famously the Queen Mother once said.
Anyway. But yeah, that was challenging, and that was at a festival, and I had a huge desk. And
what do all those buttons do? I mean, if this desk is like this size, I mean,
there's one there on the picture. There's one there on the picture, which I think is a.
Oh, hang on, I'm
going to live.
Let me just. So there's a lovely desk.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, 90% of that you're never going to touch.
Well, it depends on how many channels you're using. But yeah, I mean, it's not as frightening as it looks, really. I mean, each channel pretty much does the same thing.
Yeah.
Again, I had to do a guesstimate mix to start off with, and this particular, in fact, that's a photograph from that Dahl Foundation gig.
Yeah, it's a beautiful visually, actually, aesthetically. That is a beautiful desk.
Yeah. I believe that. I'm not sure what that is. I think it's
sound.
Or it might be a Soundcraft. I'm not sure.
I think that's what it is, because you can see the logo just at the top of the desk in the middle.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
But a desk is a desk. They all do the same thing. Unfortunately, the digital desks all have different ways of doing the same thing, and so you need to rely quite a lot on the house guy who actually put the PA system in there. Who runs the whole thing and wired it all up, because underneath and all the technical side of linking up with the amps and all that, I have nothing to do with.
That's a house function in this kind of gig, then.
I mean the PA is provided for the whole festival.
Right. Whole festival, yeah.
Yeah, so you have to adapt to that. But they did give me the option of using a Midas, but I didn't. I just went for the main desk.
Sure.
And it was brilliant. I've got to say, I did a predicted mix, and it came out, and it was brilliant, and they sounded fantastic. They're great, but you're talking 20 people on stage with this sort of thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, all different acoustic instruments as well to make up.
A lot of drums and some pre-recorded stuff, which was fantastic as well.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed that. That was great. So I do get the chance to mix other bands now and again.
That's nice, because you've been doing a lot of work, which we're going to talk about with Martin Turner on current tours or tours in the last few years.
This is obviously more in the current age.
Yeah.
Not going back to the good old days.
Sure, but you've had a lot. I don't want to. I don't want to fluff you too much, but I'm going to. You've had a lot of praise for your sound work with the Martin, particularly with the Martin Turner tours. Like Classic Rock Magazine did give you a ton of praise on the 2018 tour. Amazing audio quality held the audience spellbound. So I figure you know your stuff.
That's a real nice compliment.
Yeah.
You know, from a major magazine to even pay attention to that. You know, because you're invisible. You're the sound guy. They can hear you, but they don't know who's providing that. They don't really know who's there.
Yeah, most people don't even think about it, I think. And
No.
How was the band? What was the? What did
They
play?
do notice it if it's shit, by the way.
That's right. That's right. Everyone notices it when it's shit. Yes.
It's a bit like playing the guitar. You can play 1,000 correct notes and everything. You make one, and the whole audience make one bum note, and the whole audience turns
That's
around
right.
and looks at you.
You sleep with one sheep, and nobody ever forgets it. Yeah. That's. Oh, sorry. Did I say that out loud? No.
Sorry,
I mean, I know we're skipping quite a bit of your career, but I do want to go back to it later. Some of the other stuff you've done, but you more recently you've continued that relationship with Martin and Martin Turner's ex Wishbone Ash. Martin Turner ex Wishbone Ash is the lineup. This is I think this is pretty recent.
Yeah, it's very recent. That's the shop when we arrived back in the UK and just got through dealing with the carnet, and we were free to leave and get back home.
So end of European tour, yeah.
It was just a few weeks ago. Yeah, we got Martin there in the center with his psychedelic glasses. Misha Nikolic to his left is an excellent guitarist from Serbia.
The guy with the Floyd t-shirt on, yeah.
To Martin's left is Misha, and then there's Christina, who is the merch lady. To Martin's right, you've got, I think he's got a Pink Floyd t-shirt on. That's Danny Wilson, and he's also a brilliant guitarist. And Sonny Flint, Sonny Flint is the new drummer. And his father is or was the drummer for John Mayall's Blues Band back in the Beano days.
All right, wow.
Yeah, that's
didn't know that. Yeah, and there's some guy on the far right here.
That's me. Yeah.
So this is the end of the tour. How that was in mainly in Germany or Europe?
Germany and Holland, and
Holland,
we did a gig in Switzerland, although officially we didn't. Mainly because the borders were closed, and we went over and did it without getting a carnet signed.
Interpol will be after you now.
I know, maybe I shouldn't say that, but there you go. It's out there now.
Rock and roll, illegal rock and roll gigs.
Well, yeah. I mean, the way it unveiled was we'd gone into Germany with a stop off at Saarbrücken the night before the first gig. Did the first gig. Second day, we're heading for Switzerland. Martin can't find his passport. So, not panic, but it's like, well, where is it? Search everywhere, of course. Anyway, I called the hotel from Saarbrücken, and it was there. It left it in the hotel. And that was 300k the wrong direction, not towards Switzerland, the other way. So we had no way of getting that apart from getting a courier. This is on Good Friday, where everything is closed in Germany. You can't even do a gig in Germany on Good Friday. So we got a courier to get Martin's passport and meet us at the Swiss border, which cost quite a few of the old euros. But we did it, and we met him there and everything. And then we went across the border, and the border is unmanned. So we're like, what the fuck, So we actually turned back and tried to find a border that was open. Couldn't find a border that was open. And thought, well, what can we do? We just have to go through. Cars were just going through into Switzerland. So we did that. But on the day after the Swiss gig, traveling back into Germany, we were worried that we're going to get pulled up, and then they're going to go, well, why aren't the documents stamped, and the carnet documents, which gets your equipment in and out of these different countries.
Mm.
So we were nervous. So we got back to the same border that we crossed over, and it was still unmanned. So we thought, great, we just drive straight through back into Germany. Brilliant. Hooray. The road took us along the south of Germany and back into Switzerland.
All right. I guess
Without
roads
us-
don't respect borders, really, do they? I mean,
There
they
was
were there
no
first.
border. Took us back into Switzerland. And then coming out of that, it was like a spike coming up from Switzerland or something, a spike of the territory. And so we had to get through that. And so we got to the other end, and it is manned, and they're checking vehicles.
Mm.
So we're like, oh shit, what's going to happen here? And they just waved us through. And luckily enough, we just got back in the country, back into Germany again. So, but nervous times, you know, and you got to do these
Yeah.
sort of, you know, the gig must go on. You got to
The
get
gig
there somehow.
must go on. Yeah, I mean, I guess in the 70s there was even more border issues that you had to deal with.
Well, there were when we first started going to Europe back when I was 19. You know, just before we got into the EU, it was a nightmare again. But then there was borders for every country within. It wasn't an EU then, so you had to go through the French border, into the Belgian border, into the German border. Wherever you're going, you had to go through another border, and that used to, you know, we got held up at Aachen. I think was one of the major
Carney
ones.
after Carney after
Carney
Carney.
after Carney after the Carney nightmare, and that got us into. Well, you know, even like Miles, the great Miles Copeland, Mr. Manager, like he was responsible for the Carnet at the time when we got into France, and he'd forgotten to get it signed in England, so he had to get back on the boat and go back over to the UK to get it signed without them.
No email, no. I mean, faxes weren't probably even that.
No. I don't think there was
physically
even
go.
faxes.
So, just for those who and we have a very knowledgeable audience, obviously. Those who may not know who Miles Copeland is, Miles Copeland is famous manager, record label guy, whose brother is Stuart Copeland of the Police, obviously, and who was also in Curved Air and bands like that back in the day. Miles is a bit of a legendary figure, isn't he?
He is, yeah. I mean, you know, he's son of a diplomat in the Middle East.
Diplomat,
Yeah.
CIA diplomat, yes.
Yeah, they were CIA connected.
Yeah.
So he had a big house in St. John's Wood where the band used to rehearse, and that's where the conversation about we can't take Mark to the States happened. But yeah, no, I wouldn't say he's a nice guy. He's a hard hitting manager. You know, it's like, get this goddamn thing, get the fucking thing done. You know, so like, he was really, he'd get quite.
Well, he's one of those
quite
guys
animated.
from that era, like Led Zeppelin's guy, Peter Grant.
Yeah. You have to
Don
be a tough-
Arden. Don Arden.
Yeah. You had to be a tough old guy back in those days, and there probably still managers like that now. I mean, Miles, you know, as you say, went on to manage the Police after Wishbone, and had great success with that, and you know, many other things. You know, I don't know what he's doing these days, but you know,
Sitting on a pile of cash, I imagine.
well, you never know. He went through bankruptcy a couple of times.
Oh, it's true.
Back in those days.
Did you know
Famous
Stuart at
Star
all?
Trucking tour, you know.
Oh, the Star Trucking, yeah. I mean, that's.
I don't know whether Granny probably talked to you about the Star Trucking tour. Granny and Mal.
Yeah, we're
both
going to
on that
do.
tour.
We could do a whole show on that. Yeah. Did you know Stuart at all as well? No?
Yeah, I knew Stuart. In fact, back then, Wishbone had just formed. They were just rehearsing at Miles Copeland's house in St. John's Wood. I was there helping out with the cabinets. They had, 4x12 cabs, and we were painting them white to get a nice, clean sort of, stage look. And so I'm outside in the courtyard spraying them up and all that, and I can hear this drumming going on pretty bad, in fact, which I later found out was Stuart. He was only 16 at the time, I think, so he was learning his trade. He did get better.
Well, I mean, he was in Curved Air for a few years, the British progressive rock band Curved Air, and I guess he learned a lot there. And then, of course, the Police. Well,
Yeah, no, he turned into a very individual drummer, and it's excellent what he did with the Police.
Yeah, it's interesting that you heard him back in the day though, when he was like
he couldn't play.
Yeah,
we've all been through that. We were all.
Everyone starts somewhere. Yeah,
you got to start somewhere. That's right. And he grew to a fantastic level.
He did. I mean, legendary now, but not just with the Police, but some of the other stuff he's done and soundtracks and so on. But you're. So I didn't want to move away from the Wishbone Ash stuff that you're doing now. I mean, I do love this.
Yeah.
Hang on, there's a picture here. This one, this picture of Martin live, I think, is a brilliant photograph.
Yeah, well, Martin, is hanging out now really well. You can't say because of his age, whatever, but he's getting up there. He's 75, I think now. But his performance is better than ever, if anything. His bass playing and his vocals. Although we had a tough time on the last tour where he got a bad cold, and we ended up having to cancel a gig in Newcastle, which we're redoing in a few weeks' time. But he was ill and exhausted, and
not getting any younger either. Yeah,
no, not getting. And this is only on the last tour, and we had to cancel one gig, and quite honestly, we were afraid that was it. Because he was on about pain in his kidneys. But we went straight into the European tour, and he'd recovered after a couple of days, and he was brilliant. And I got to take my hat off to him.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, it's a slog at any time, but as you're getting older and you're ill, that's. Courtney, I want to say hello to our friend Courtney, who's a bass player too, of course. Hey, Courtney, and she loves this picture. And so do I. That bass, I read somewhere he bought it off another artist, and I can't remember who it was now. That bass, he bought it from another musician, and I wish I could remember.
I think he might have got it from.
Oh God, it was
He has told me, but I can't remember.
Yeah, it'll come back to me. But he got it off another music. It's a beautiful bass, that absolute Gibson.
Yeah, he plays the Thunderbird.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's a big bass. It's a big bass.
I love it. Yeah,
and he is a master. He's got a very unusual style, Martin, because he uses a pick, and he picks on an upstroke when he's playing. It's very unusual style. Yeah, and in a way, he's not really a bass player because he provides a lot of third harmonies, because the Wishbone thing is very based on harmony guitars, and the bass provides a third harmony. So he's a melodic bass player, if you like.
Yeah. Well, very progressive. I mean, I always see Wishbone Ash as a progressive rock band more than a hard rock band. They're a lot of intricate harmonies, a lot of intricate vocals, arrangements, progressive arrangements.
In some ways, that's the brilliant thing about Wishbone, is because the melodic choice is always very tasty, and they've got rock songs, Blowing Freeze and stuff like that, where they, fall to the floor, get everybody jumping, bouncing. But a lot of their stuff is, as you say, progressive or melodic. A lot of nice songs. And I think that was what held them back. If they had just been a straight boom, 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 boom,
like a Thin Lizzy hard rock twin guitar thing.
Yeah, like so many of the bands, they probably would be top band now. And they're noted for the melodic side, and a lot of their fans are for that. But on the general acceptance, the general public never overestimate the, their way of understanding the music. The general audience wanted boom, 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 your status quo.
They already had status quo, though. They didn't need Wishbone Ash to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
Right, so-
that's my theory on why they, because we were doing 8,000 seats in the States back in the mid 70s, headlining over acts like Aerosmith and
yeah. I've seen some of the
Joe
concert
Walsh,
posters. Joe Walsh.
Barnstorm, and all right, nice one.
This
Love
is
Joe
my
Walsh.
Frankie Miller concert, tribute concert he did, or support concert when Frankie Miller became ill with a stroke. He did a gig in Edinburgh for Frankie Miller, and this is the T-shirt from it. So,
Right.
so Joe Walsh appeared for that because he's a big friend of Frankie Miller, Scottish singer who had a really bad stroke.
Well, I met Frankie Miller a few times.
Yeah.
We had a flat in Hampstead. Joe Walsh, actually, one of my favorite guitarists.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we had a flat in Hampstead. There, staying there was Hamish Stewart from the Average White Band.
Because you worked with him,
yeah. I knew them a long time before I worked with them.
Mm.
Onnie McIntyre from the Average White Band, myself, and all associated people, and we used to have parties there. They had it was a big balcony overlooking London. It's a really nice place in Hampstead, built by a rear admiral, so it's like shaped like a ship coming through.
Oh wow! Right.
Reddington Road. Yeah, and I met Frankie Miller there. He was a friend of Hamish's. All the Scottish,
small Scottish rock contingent. There's not that many. Yeah.
All the heavy drinkers.
Yeah,
Frankie. They were real heavy drinkers back then.
Yeah, I'm going to do a whole show on Frankie Miller someday because he was a brilliant singer and writer and guitar. I mean, he played guitar quite well too, and he had some fantastic people in his band over the years. But like Rod Stewart always says, he wishes he was Frankie Miller because he's such a great vocalist. That some of his material from the 70s is just killer. So it's, but I wanted to, because obviously it's only a 2-hour show today and there's a lot of stuff we could cover. I did want to talk about leading on from, following on from your work with Martin, that you're not just you're a writer, you're a producer, you've written songs. There's a song on the Written in the Stars album here at Martin Turner called Interstellar Rockstar, which you co-wrote or wrote, and then Martin's added some stuff onto it.
Correct.
Is that, I mean, actually, I'm going to play the video if that's okay with you, sir, if you'll indulge me. Martin said some very nice things about you in this song on this video. It's on his YouTube site. So this is him talking about the song Interstellar Rockstar that you wrote and appeared on this album.
Very much, Martin. That's nice. I haven't seen that before.
Oh, it's lovely. I found that on his own YouTube channel, and I thought it was a beautiful tribute. So tell us a little bit about that song. You could hear it in the background. It sounds beautiful. I've listened to the whole thing and myself separately. I didn't want to play it if you want to get copyright problems. That I think we were okay because Martin was talking over it. It's a very beautiful, very, if you don't mind me saying so, the way it's played is very Floyd-esque, and I know you've got a bit of a history with Floyd music. But tell us about that song.
Well, yeah, that is the second version of that song. It started off being more of a rock song, and I was playing it with the New Machine, which was a Pink Floyd tribute band, and we used to integrate that with the set because we wanted to push the original stuff a bit, which you can do. We were never really a tribute band. We played Pink Floyd music, and not in the way that we're trying to be Pink Floyd, just in a way of loving the music.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely Pink Floyd influence there. My other co-writer, more of a producer, really, is Ivan Jewell.
Ivan Jewell, yeah.
Yeah, and Ivan he's a more of a classical composer, and he does a lot of choral arrangements for choirs and stuff like that. He's a chorister, very straight musically. And he sent me this thing of these choirs, these sort of very angelic choirs, which I thought was beautiful. So I asked him to come up with an arrangement in a similar style. So it became very choral and orchestral, which is what that track is. But it's also got the rock guitar on it and as well. But yeah, what Martin was hinting at there is what it was about. Who is the interstellar rock star, right? It's not me.
That's what I was wondering.
It's God.
Oh,
God is the interstellar rock star. And it's about the appreciation of the timing of the universe and all the things that go on and how it's perfectly in sync and it's the wonder of that, really. That's what the song is about.
Yeah, it is a beautiful track, and it was the version on the album there is Martin's current band, I believe, isn't it? Danny Wilson, you mentioned, and Nisha playing those beautiful guitars, and Tim Brown on the drums. Martin, obviously, on bass and vocals. It's a gorgeous track. You must be very proud of that one, I would think.
Yeah, the orchestration is exactly the orchestration that Ivan produced, and we just lifted it and put it on that track.
Yeah.
So all the strings and everything and the choirs in the background are all from the previous recording that we did. Where I played all the guitars and everything. But
this is a beautiful album as well. I mean,
it's a great album, and it's as I said, it fits right in with the theme of the album, Written in the Stars. Sadly, Martin's fans or Wishbone Ash fans only want to hear the old stuff.
I think that's a common thing for a lot of classic rock bands. That they don't get the.
Yeah, although we toured that album, well, that's a recording of the live.
You produced this. I mean, you produced this album.
So that's got all the Written in the Stars tracks on it live. Definitely worth getting. It's good. Sorry, I lost the train of thought there.
Sorry.
Okay.
So you did produce as well as that Martin, as well as the Martin Turner stuff that you've produced, like the live stuff. You've done a few other things. You worked with this guy who hopefully was clothed when he was
when he was alive.
When he was alive. Bryn Evans.
Bryn Evans, beautiful guy, great songwriter. I mean, he came into
Welsh because his name is Welsh. I don't know.
His name is Welsh, but he's not. Okay. He's not really Welsh. Bryn Morgan Evans is as Welsh as you can get, I guess.
I guess so. That's why I wondered.
But a girlfriend of mine, brought Bryn into the studio, and he just had this acoustic guitar, and we just set up a couple of mics, and he played the stuff. And we weren't really planning to do a session, but I recorded it anyway, and that was it. It was done.
Yeah.
He just played the tracks and sang it beautifully in the control room, with acoustic guitar and vocal. And yeah, Bryn was a great talent. And sadly, he had his problems, mental problems, and
Okay. Sad, yeah.
and
But this was
ended up
this,
passing away in 2006.
yeah. So this album was released in 2007, I think. Dare to Believe.
Yeah,
Bryn
yeah. We
Morgan.
just finished it off the best we could. We obviously we couldn't really change anything, so it's not the best recording in the world, but it captures his songs, you know.
Yeah, and it is available on iTunes and other platforms. It's
Yeah,
out
CD
there.
Baby. I think we released it through CD Baby.
You also
there was a question before.
Right.
Get back to this in a sec. On is Wishbone Ashes album collection still available? And yes, it is. So you just have to do some research on it, and you know you'll find all, especially the classic albums. And there's even a whole package of the whole Wishbone.
Well, there is a big box set. You get deluxe editions of all of them.
Yeah,
available
but
digitally.
you're talking 250 quid for that, you know. But you can buy the albums individually, and I guess Live Dates, Argus are the main ones. But the first album, Pilgrimage, the second album, they're all worth getting. They're all you know, and of course, Written in the Stars.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff's all available online, both physically and digitally.
Yeah, there was a question.
I've got the deluxe Argus digital one, which is really some great stuff in it. That is one good thing about it now. You're saying that it's hard to get the bands to play. People don't want to hear the new stuff, but at least there are fantastic repackaging of the old albums of these bands. With deluxe editions, with different mixes, acoustic, live performances. There's, you know, like double the tracks on them now from the originals, and some of them are really good.
And I think they're available in vinyl as well as CD as well. I'm not sure, but you might have to work hard to get the vinyl.
They are like Argus particularly is 180 gram vinyl versions of it, and so on. And,
right.
They are out there. Find your local record store. They still exist in some places.
I mean, Wishbone Ash, I've gone right. I mean, they were peaking in the mid 70s. We would, as I say, we were doing like 8,000 seaters and stuff, and you know, big gigs in England. You know, we headlined over ELP back at the Oval, and you know, all these bands. Even Springsteen, I think we went headlined over, but they all seem to overtake.
Well, things go up and down.
Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the 80s, at the end of the 70s, Wishbone and that style of music was taking a big dive, as probably most people would agree. I mean, you know, classic rock, as it was known, you know, really took a dip. You know, once punk came in, and then you got the Romantics, New Romantics, and you know, things changed in the 80s, and so all that stuff went, you know, sank to the bottom really. And it's only in recent years that I think people have, you know, gone, well, you know, we need to get this stuff back because, you know, otherwise it's lost forever, or we want to hear that again, or relive your youth a bit. And
that's one of the reasons I like working with you guys and the Rowdies, is this is keeping alive the classic rock material and experiences and stories that otherwise may be lost. And it's important to me. That's important culturally.
It is. And you know, I feel very really pleased that, you know, fortunate that I grew up during that period. You know, okay, I'm not so pleased that I've reached this age now, but
you're still, you know, but you still reached it though.
That's an achievement in itself. But yeah, I mean, going through that era where music was metamorphosis into, you know, from my dad's era, if you like, and from the rock and roll 60s and all that type of stuff, and into more progressive music. I mean, the Beatles were ahead of the game with that, with a lot of their stuff, you know, using the sitar and being a bit more psychedelic.
Well, they were using mellotrons, one of the first to use a mellotron.
Moody Blues did all that. But that whole era of music was so progressive. I mean, songs were no longer 2.5 minute radio songs. They were 7 minutes pieces of music. Actual. It's equivalent to like classical music in a way.
Well, it is. I mean, things like the Sgt. Pepper and other albums that came after that are the classical music of their day, of our day. It moved from throwaway 2-minute fluffy pop songs into something of lasting importance, in my opinion.
Absolutely, it's revolutionary, and it's not only just in the music, but in the artwork. The posters from those days, the graphics, the psychedelic images or style are used to this day. You watch almost everything, and they've got sort of fuzzed out backgrounds and stuff, and all the graphics and technical stuff these days that you see on the TV and everything all stemmed from that time. It wouldn't have happened without those progressive times.
I mean, Robert Freeman and David Bailey and Andy Warhol and all these artists and photographers from the 60s, they created all this fantastic imagery. I mean, there's so many I can't even begin to talk about. That stuff endures, in my opinion. Whereas I think a lot of today, call me old-fashioned, a lot of today's pop
you are
stuff,
old-fashioned.
I am. You were talking about the pop music in Britain today. That stuff just isn't going to last. It's ephemeral.
It's throwaway. It's like tissue, isn't it?
Yeah, Courtney says the old psychedelic concert. We could just watch hundreds of those old concert posters, and they're brilliant. But there's stuff here. I mean, I just want to show.
Well, it painted the way for the future. Even if a lot of people sort of knock hippies and stuff now, they think it's whatever. Oh, just a hippie.
Yeah.
Well, without those hippies, the mind expanding, if you like, we were the first ones worried about the planet. We were the first ones, about ecology and stuff like that. That's where it all started.
Oh,
it's
indeed,
taken us out to even get anywhere.
Anti-war stuff, and just
yeah, absolutely. The anti-war movement, especially in America, the anti-war thing with Vietnam was a major thing at that time, and we thought we might have been past the war stages, but they seem to be lurking again.
War never goes out of fashion for some people, but there's money involved. But this is not a political show, so
no, we don't want to go into that.
But it was a movement, and things endured, and part of that movement was the visible cultural stuff like poster. This is from 1998, but it's still a great example of a nice poster of a band you worked with.
Yeah.
Average White Band, and the stuff like this. I mean, you were working for the Average White Band through the late early 80s.
That's right, the very early 80s. Yeah. They again had passed their peak in a way. Wilco was with them right through their peak when they had the number one pick up the pieces and all that. A couple of guys had left the band by the time I joined them, but we were all living. I was living in Connecticut at the time, and those guys. Alan Gorey has a house in Connecticut. Roger Ball, Molly Duncan, sadly passed away a couple of years ago. But they were fabulous guys to work with. The Average White Band, so funny.
Yeah.
So it's just all about fun, and yet they get as soon as they hit the stage.
Super professional, tight band,
yeah, absolutely. And then as soon as they left the stage, Theatre of Excess.
That's what a great name for an album, the Theatre of Excess.
I think
it
was coined as one. Yeah,
Theatre of Excess. You should call the Rock and Roll Rowdies. Rock and Roll Rowdies should do a regular live show, as we've talked about, on your channel, and call it Theatre of Excess.
Why not?
But yeah, they worked with the Average White Band. I know we're going to skip tons of stuff. We'll do more shows, obviously. But you worked after Wishbone Ash. You did some work with a band called the Sims Brothers.
I'm glad you got that.
And you can see them here. They toured with Peter Frampton.
Correct. Yeah.
And they toured with David Bowie. They were David Bowie's backing vocalists.
That's right. Yeah, well, that was after the album. Mel Baster, again, who I mentioned earlier, was very instrumental in getting them a management deal with Boston's manager, Paul Ahern, I think his name is. So that's when we went on tour with. We got to do the album in Florida. Went on tour with Peter Frampton.
This album here, they did two albums, I think, the Sims Brothers. But this is one of them.
Unfortunately, they never really cracked it, even though they had some great songs. But once they moved on, there they are.
I love the hair. I mean, that's so late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Frank Sims is the redhead at the back next
Oh,
to
yeah.
and his brother George, Bud
Yeah.
Tunick in front of him, and Mr.
Yeah, I mean,
Kinsella.
as a band,
Yeah.
apparently as a band, they didn't make it, but they did get the crack the great tour with Peter Frampton, as you say.
Yeah,
And then,
well, Bud Tunick ended up working with Nile Rodgers as a sort of a producer assistant or something.
okay. Yeah, and then the
So
Bowie thing.
he got the Sims brothers, the vocalists. There were 3 vocalists. In when he was doing the Let's Dance album.
Yeah.
So they ended up doing all the vocals on the Let's Dance album, China Girl and all that stuff.
Yeah, and
they-
the Serious Moonlight tour, which this photo's from. Yeah.
Yeah, that was brilliant for them. And they also went on and worked with Billy Joel as well.
Yeah, I believe
you
so.
know.
Yeah.
So I mean that that shows the quality of their vocal.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, if you watch the Serious Moonlight tour video and listen to the Let's Dance album, you can hear a lot of fantastic backing vocals layered in there, as well as that great guitar by Stevie Ray Vaughan, of course, in the album.
Absolutely.
I love this poster, by the way. This is the Sims brothers are on the Peter Frampton bill. I just love. This is in New Jersey, I guess. Capitol Theater. Judas
Right.
Priest, Bonnie Raitt, Talking Heads, Todd Rundgren and Utopia, Ian Hunter Band with Mick Ronson, and City Boy, one of my favorite bands of all time that nobody ever talks about now.
I don't know them. American or UK
British band had a big hit with a song called 5705. Big hit single. I did a video about them. Charlie Daniels Band and the Winters Brothers. I'm assuming that's Johnny and Edgar. Why they would be supporting Charlie Daniels as well?
I can't get that. I don't think that is right.
It can't be them. But that just shows you the great material or great gigs you could see in one theater in New Jersey in that era.
Yeah, that would have been about 79, 80.
Yeah.
Todd Rundgren.
I love that.
We actually did some recording at Todd Rundgren's studio, Bearsville.
Bearsville.
That's upstate New York. Who's upstate New York?
It is upstate New York. Yeah, Bearsville. I do love. I've seen Todd Rundgren live a few times back in the day, and Something Anything is one of my favorite albums of all time. His beautiful double album. But yeah,
I've never seen him, but one of my favorite singles of all time is "I See the Light."
I Saw the Light. Yeah,
I Saw the Light. What a great song.
Which is on the album Something Anything, which is a brilliant double album he made. Virtually all of it recorded just himself. His band are on side 4, but it's one of the greatest albums of all time, in my opinion.
Brilliant talents.
Oh yeah, so
Peter Frampton's still playing around, I believe.
He is. He is. Yeah, he's a lot less hairy than he was then.
Great
I wanted to ask you about this picture you sent me. So tell me about this poster.
Well, I sent you that because I couldn't find the photograph that I wanted to send you. But that's when I got back from America, I started this company called Winner Street Promotions because I was living on Winner Street.
Oh, I see that at the top. Yeah.
And I teamed up with Kim Turner, who was another brother of Martin's.
Yeah.
And he was tour manager for Sting. Anyway, but he through the Miles Copeland connection and all the rest of it. But yeah, this wasn't co-promoted with him, but I started to do some concerts, promoting concerts in venues.
You became a promoter.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, Winner Street Promotions. And Johnny Cash, we did 3 shows. But some of the bigger ones that we did was there was a venue here called it's a leisure center, Tall Bay Leisure Center, with a big sports room, basketball sort of size.
Yeah.
Venue. Never did any gigs there. They never did anything. So I spent some time getting all the structural information together from the architects, how much weight they could fly, from the ceilings, rafters, to get the lighting systems in, and got a stage and crew and everything together. And we put Status Quo in there, which was fantastic. And probably the best one that we ever did was Meatloaf.
Yeah, so I mean, this isn't that from that gig, but you promoted Meatloaf in that era, yeah.
I did. That was 1988.
Yeah.
In Paynton in the UK, and yeah, it was challenging, but I wanted to do something different. I'd come back from America after the Average White Band thing, really, and I had personal reasons for coming back. My parents were getting old. I hadn't seen them in nearly 20 years.
You've been living in the States for a long
running
time.
away at 16 and then forgetting about family and all that. But, it kind of gets to you after a while, and you think, my parents are in their 70s now. I got to get home and see them. So I did that and wanted to set up operations here, because I was, obviously didn't, you still have to keep living. But yes, Quo are great.
So you put these bands all on in your area?
I did, yeah, at the Leisure Centre. And then, unfortunately, the Leisure Centre, was owned by the council, did their classic thing and started reducing the capacity by going, the fire lanes aren't wide enough, and you got too many people standing there, and made it basically financially unviable.
Yeah, I mean, that's just ridiculous. Yeah,
I know. So it stopped me to squeeze.
Let's just kill the whole thing dead. Yeah, I mean, that'll be so great for the town.
Yeah, and they actually did try and put some stuff on themselves afterwards.
Yeah, that's what it was all about. That's what it was all about. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was all about. They wanted me out so that they could do their own thing, but they didn't know how to do it, so they failed it.
So you promoted the Meatloaf, the Quo, Squeeze. You mentioned as promoting.
Yeah, Squeeze for there. Yeah.
Again, that's a different gig. This is a different, but same era.
Same era. Yeah.
Still with Jules
Holland, and
great band though. I've seen Squeeze live
I
a
think
few
that was a
times.
sellout at the time. They had hits going, in
Big
the UK
hits.
charts at that time. Yeah, big hits going.
Big hits at that time in the UK. I saw them a few times live. Just one of the greatest bands ever, I think. Never got their due internationally, I don't think. But,
yeah, they were kind of a niche band, but they wrote great stuff and they're quality musicians. Yeah,
I mean, Tempted, the song Tempted, which was post Jules Holland. That was Paul Carrick, but great song. And then a band called Tapau actually was in your list.
That's right. They were the first ones, actually. That was with Kim Turner. Kim actually had, basically called me out and goes, "Can we get Tapau on next week?"
Yeah.
They'd just gone to #1 with, I think, China in Your Hand.
Yeah.
So we put it on sale, sold out immediately.
Yeah, John's going to mention the name.
Oh, well, I was going to say in the US, it was Heart and Soul.
Heart and Soul was a big hit, yeah. So Heart and Soul and then China in Your Hand were huge hits for this band, Tapau. Tapau, of course, being a Star Trek reference, but deliberately that was.
Yeah, wasn't it? Was it the dog? No, it's not the dog. That's Toto, isn't it?
It's Tapau isn't that Spock's mother or something? Or
I'm not sure.
I can't remember.
But,
somebody will tell me in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, please let us know. Yeah.
But the China in Your Hand and Heart and Soul, huge hits, and you put them on. You promoted them.
Yeah, Carol Decker, beautiful girl.
Oh yeah.
She showed up for the sound check or whatever, but it was going to take an hour or so for to get the gear set up. So I took her on a little tour around Torbay in my Rover 2800.
Ooh, very nice.
Which she was quite impressed with. not impressed with enough, though. But I mean, I took her around, showed her the sights of Torbay from the cliffs and everything.
Yeah,
and that was kind of nice. She was really.
I saw them live supporting Bryan Adams in the Glasgow SECC 1980, call it 85, I can't remember exactly, or round about, it was early 80s anyway, with Bryan Adams.
That was when they were happening. Yeah, I mean, I think I promoted them. It must have been a bit later than that. I think about 88.
Maybe, yeah. I think it was 85, 86 I saw them supporting Bryan Adams. It was a Bryan Adams Into the Fire tour, which was it was an excellent gig, a beautiful gig, brilliant, and they were really good. And I think at
What
first
venue was that? Was that?
that was the Glasgow SECC,
Oh, okay.
which was still fairly new at that time. I think the
Yeah,
Scottish
yeah, I bet.
Exhibition Centre on the Clyde.
Yeah,
Probably 7,000-8,000.
yeah, because I think the gigs in the 70s in Glasgow were mainly at the Apollo.
The Apollo, the
And
legendary Glasgow.
what a gig that is! And it was, you know, in that I remember the balcony just absolutely.
Oh yeah, we've talked about this.
It's moving at least 6 inches to a foot,
And
up and down. It's like, you know,
why would anybody stand under that? I mean, it's like if the Quo when Status Quo would play, dropping down 3 feet.
Yeah. But the Scottish audience, of course, are just brilliant. You know, I mean, they really got into it. And that was talk about North-South divide. That's the difference. The audiences in Scotland, Newcastle, Liverpool, up there, everybody gets into it, sings, dances, jumps up and down.
Yeah, if they love you, they love you. If they hate you,
oh well,
hear about it too.
Thankfully, never experienced that, but throw bottles at you, shit.
Yeah. So,
but down south, everyone's more sedate. You know, sort of sit there in the audience.
Indeed, jolly good show.
Yeah, a bit too. Yeah.
Yeah, but then there was a lot of drink flying around in Glasgow too. So
yeah, well, that's right. That loosens it up.
So we've only got a few minutes left, unfortunately. I mean, there's so much stuff. We'll definitely, obviously, Mark, with your indulgence, we'll have you back for more shows. But
that would be nice.
You've done a lot of live performances with your, as you say, they're not specifically a tribute band, but playing a lot of Pink Floyd with the New Machine, sometimes known as Interstellar
Pink Floyd.
There's a lot of Pink Floyd tribute bands out there with similar names, so it's hard to distinguish some of these. But this is your band, and you're the lead guitarist, and do you sing as well in these?
I do sing. I sing more now than what I did then, because we had Jamie Darling on the drums at that time, and he was a brilliant singer, so he carried the lead vocals.
Yeah.
There's my friend Nigel Pike there on bass.
Oh, sorry, Davina's put me right. Yes, T'Pau was the female Vulcan officiant over Spock and Kirk's fight. That's correct, in a mock time.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Davina.
Spock's mother was human. That's correct. Yes. Sorry, but yeah, this is. I mean, you're still doing this. You still do these gigs.
Well, I've just been invited to go and play in Thailand, which we did a few times. For a charity out there, and the charity is for children with AIDS, children that are born with AIDS, which, you know, is a major thing out there. There's no support care or anything like that. So, a friend of mine out there, Richie Rhodes, does this thing. He's a biker, really. It's a biker festival. That's a bit more current. So we've just been invited to do the Burapa Festival in Thailand in February 2024.
Okay, so, nice. With the same lineup or the same?
It'll be a variation on the theme. I've had several lineups with the band that haven't been gigging the Floyd band in recent because it's. Hey, there's a lot of other Floyd bands on the market.
Well, this is the problem, yeah.
Yeah, and you know it's too expensive to make. You can't do it in pubs, really. It's too expensive. There's not enough, you know. So basically, that's shelved. Although I play, that's me playing Coldplay Numb right there.
Yeah. No. Just a couple of minutes of this.
Okay.
A little bit of this. Eventually, they're going to show you playing the guitar.
Yeah, there we are.
Yeah, your hair's a bit darker there.
That's sweat. That's just wet sweat.
This is in Thailand. Yeah.
This is in Thailand in 2010, I think.
This is such good. I watched this a few times. I mean, it's beautiful. You play it really well, mate. Really well. Beautiful. Yeah, lovely stuff. Your stage dancing probably could do with some work.
Not sure about the stage dancing.
But what a great sound. And so impressive. And unfortunately, we don't have too much time.
Okay.
For more,
Now that guy right there playing bass, left-handed, is Paul McCracken, and he is a very, very good friend of mine and a very respected man in this area. He not only he's just built a studio at his house, and it is underground.
Oh wow!
It's so he bought an SSL desk. He's done really well financially, Paul. So, but yeah, so this is a studio that's just opening up now right here in Torbay. So we're actually looking for people to come in, but it's it's
Cool.
top notch. And he stays along with sorry, I lost.
Oh, no worries, mate. So unfortunately, we do have to kind of draw a line out. I'm getting signaled by Bill that our
We were
time
going
is
to run
up.
out of stuff hours ago.
Oh no, we've barely started. Honestly, I had a million things lined up, and I wanted to hit some of the highlights. That's why I jumped a bunch of stuff just to get your playing on the screen.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, that's a great little excerpt there, and
it was lovely.
It reminded me on how good it was when we played that festival, and it's like when we got, and then coincidentally, a couple of days later, I get a message from Richie in Thailand saying, "Do you fancy doing next year?" So
great.
We'll look forward to doing that.
Well, we'll look at you got to document it all so we can get it all on YouTube.
Okay.
So thank you to everyone out there on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, KGRA Digital Broadcasting. Thank you to the chat. You've been fantastic. Really appreciate you all being here. I hope you all enjoyed yourselves. Thanks to John, Martin, Dustin. Appreciate you being here, buddies.
Sorry you couldn't get a word in edgeways, guys. You know, it's normally me struggling to get a word in edgeways.
Mark and I can talk a lot, but no, I appreciate you being here. Thanks to Bill behind the scenes as well.
I really appreciate you guys' support and everything. It's lovely.
Mark, thank you again. Everyone go check out the Rock and Roll Rowdies. Check out this shows we've done on here on Pop Culture Minefield on my channel and their YouTube. Go check those out, and there's some brilliant stuff. And we'll be doing a lot more in the months to come. Mark, my friend, I really appreciate this. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you again. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. What's up for you? Just briefly, anything planned for the next few days?
Yeah, well, tonight we're going to go to an open mic session. Me and my friend Anshuman, who I mentioned earlier, Indian chap. I've been playing some of his songs. He sings a lot of Indian songs, and I've been just putting the chords behind him. He's a great singer, and he sings it in Indian. And we've done a couple of jam nights, open mic nights, and people love it. So
film it on the phone.
yeah. Well, okay. We'll try and get it.
And this is in Paynton, yeah? In Paynton?
This is in Paynton tonight, yeah. So we're going to do that tonight and go and air a couple of things and see what happens there. But it's just really relaxed, just a couple of simple Indian songs, you know. And he's just brought some travelers as well, so we're kind of moving into the Indian stuff quite a bit.
Beautiful. Good for you, mate. Well, enjoy that. And thank you again for being here. Thanks, everybody. Hope you all have a great day. And Bill, you can do that thing that you do.